Welcome back, everyone. Today, we are focusing on how landowners make decisions, especially when it comes to engaging with carbon markets and incorporating them into their financial plans. We will introduce some of the value-based decision making that landowners use. And in the next video, we will understand how to use discounting and net present value to display values for projects that landowner can understand. You can also use the educator guidebook to follow along. A few videos ago, I introduced a framework for thinking about how family forest owners allocate income to meet their goals and how they weigh what they are willing to accept in payment versus what they are willing to invest to reach those goals. This ties into their broader perspective on forest management, whether they see themselves as producers of good for society, responsible steward of the land, or feel a sense of duty to the public. These identities and values all influence their management decisions. It also ties into their idea of what their potential is as a person and who they want to be. So it's not really about revenue maximization or an industrial kind of business model. It's more about having forest ownership as part of a broader goal. I think it's important to set up the framing in this way because forest ownership is largely voluntary. In the last National Woodland Owners Survey, almost half of forest owners intentionally bought forest land, and it was not necessarily because they are intending to live off the land, but it was something that they cared about. They wanted to own forest land and receive the multiple benefits that come from ownership. Land transfer is not happening the way it used to. While many current owners inherited their land, fewer are passing it on to the next generation. Today, forest ownership tends to attract people with a specific mix of values, but it also has to make financial sense. Owning forest land is expensive. Inheriting it can come with estate taxes, plus ongoing costs like annual property taxes, invasive species management, or storm damage. Meanwhile, revenue streams are limited. That's why it's critical to help landowners stack income sources, making ownership more financially sustainable. It's a balancing act, investing in the land, keeping it healthy, doing right by it, and still trying to generate enough income to hold on to it. For many, it's practically a full-time job. One important thing to understand is who would enroll in carbon programs. Right now, there is emerging research in this space. A graduate student at Penn State conducted research on this topic. Her research is a literature review of past studies that ask landowners how much they were willing to accept payment for enrolling in carbon program. That largely had to do with delay in harvest. Her research findings were from 13 studies with 20 value estimates from different parts of the US. She found that the values ranged anywhere between $5 to $350 an acre per year. That's a huge range. So she also wanted to explore why there is such a large difference in what people are willing to accept for delaying harvest. She found that half of those values were up to 75% less than the other half. Thus, this indicates that there are early adopters that are willing to enter at a much lower cost. This has to do with some of that value-based decision making for each landowner. For example, they may consider how much they value timber harvest and how much compensation they would need to be willing to delay that harvest. So she took the data from all these studies and put it into a model that allowed to design a couple of hypothetical contracts, and these contracts were designed for specific categories of forest owners. She wanted to look at what were the value of these contracts for a specific kind of forest owners. So she came up with a few classification of owners. First, there is the passive forest owner who enjoys owning forest land, but they don't really actively manage it. They just sort of passively use it. They may harvest or they may not. And second is the conservation stewardship oriented owners who are really interested in actively managing their forest and they intend to have it for the long term. It's part of their legacy and identity, and harvesting is one tool for management, but it's not the entire focus of their management. Thirdly, there are the timber production oriented forest owners. They see land as an asset, and it's intended that commercial harvesting would occur in order to receive meaningful income from the land. For the passive forest owner, we set up the contract of being shorter, about 20 years. But since they care less about the ability to harvest, the compensation could be lower. With the conservation stewardship owner, they were working with longer contracts and they were also somewhat indifferent about commercial harvesting. For the timber production oriented owner, the contract was shorter and they needed to be compensated for delaying harvest. You can see on the screen the values she came up with for the passive forest owner and the conservation stewardship owners. The mean willingness to accept values per acre per year ranged between 3 to 20 some dollars per year, which is right around the range of what forest owners are getting paid right now. And the timber production oriented owners are looking for contracts which are much higher level of compensation because the risk of delaying harvest are more meaningful as harvesting is a higher priority. So this is just an example of priorities and how long they intend to own the property, which contributes to the styles of contracts that are interesting to them. So now, what are the opportunity cost here? Typically, we think of it as revenue we give up when choosing one income path over another. With forest land, you often can't do multiple things at once. You have to commit to a direction. That's part of understanding financial trade offs because it goes much deeper. There is also the value of opportunities lost due to the time and effort spent learning. Carbon programs, for example, have a steep learning curve. It takes time to talk to people, weigh options, and fully understand the long term commitments involved. Then there are also the non monetary benefits of owning forest land, like how you use and enjoy it. If you sign a contract to delay harvest, how might that change your forest structure? Will it affect your experience of the land? So, those are harder to quantify but still crucial to decision making. This all comes down to how confident landowners feel in weighing these complex trade offs. It's not just about numbers, it's about values and priorities. So, next, we are going to break down how to think about financial trade offs in real terms. We will look at different options like commercial harvesting, reforestation, or delaying harvest, and what those choices could mean financially in a realistic scenario. It's very important to have a forest management plan because it sets your goals and priorities in advance. It's easy to think what matters, like valuing wildlife habitat or long term conservation. But when a sudden need comes up, like a medical bill, financial pressures can shift your perspective. You might start seeing the land in terms of dollars instead of nature. That's how short term needs can override long term values. A management plan helps anchor your decisions. It reminds you of your original intentions and helps prevent reactive choices that might compromise your broader goals. It also outlines ongoing activities like your expected harvest timeline, existing cost, and how your forest structure supports the benefits you care about. So, this plan becomes the foundation for your financial strategy and legacy planning. Without it, landowners often struggle to weigh risk and benefits clearly because their decisions are made in the moment rather than guided by a long term vision. Here we have some take home messages. First, landowners use value based decision making when assessing what to do with their forest. Their preferences will determine the kinds of contracts that they are willing to accept. And lastly, Having forest owners create a management plan can help them understand the priorities for their land. As we wrap up today's video, we have a few reflection questions for you to consider. First, we want you to consider if landowner already have a forest management plan and financial plan for their investment. How much of the forest asset is represented in their financial plan? Also, when are they looking to receive a significant return on investment? All of these factors will affect the kind of contract they look to join. So really consider these factors for your landowners. Thank you for joining today's video. In general, there are a lot of things landowners consider when deciding to enter a carbon program. Displaying these options can give landowners an idea of how they want to use their land by knowing how to present their choices. If you are watching this video on YouTube, we encourage you to check out our free online educator course. If you are taking the course, here are a few reminders for you. Make sure to complete the evaluation survey and comprehension check at the end of the module.